Go podcast. I am Alan, and this is my beloved friend, Bishop, Pastor. No, he's going by Spence.
Yes.
And we've got an awesome conversation today.
I'm excited.
Evangelism is the theological word, but we're going to talk about sharing your faith. And we should say right off the bat, like we try to emphasize this in all of our episodes, that while you and I are on staff and are pastors at ACAC, Allegheny Center Alliance Church, the opinions reflected upon this podcast do not necessarily reflect the opinion. No.
Yeah.
But, we're having honest conversations about faith, culture, and whatever comes to mind.
Yeah.
And we do certainly understand, just like here at the church where we serve, where we're following Jesus in diverse community, that diversity goes with diversity of opinions and even theological viewpoints. And so we talk about that, and you and I even don't necessarily agree on everything. So we're not here to necessarily cause debate, but necessarily to help people think, especially today, to really think and consider, how do we share our faith? What are good ways? What are bad ways? There are people that are listening or watching this that really desire to share their faith, but they don't know how. And it got me thinking, like, horror stories.
Oh, yeah.
Like horror stories of just things that we probably should not be doing as Christians. But like you were mentioning earlier, you have a horror story about sharing your faith.
Yeah, well, a couple come to mind. But when I attended Liberty for my master's, just as you did.
I did.
But my degree focus was evangelism and church planting. So a couple of my classes were specific to evangelism practices. And I remember doing one of the assignments came out, and it was, hey, go stand outside a grocery store and wait for people to come out and offer to help them with their groceries. And if they do, then you have that 2 minutes to like share Jesus with people. And I just thought to myself, I'm a 6'1", large black dude. I'm not standing outside a grocery store just lingering, like asking people if I could help them because like I'm liable to get pepper sprayed. And so like I was just like, that is not the methodology that is going to work for me. But I've sat in restaurants when the wait staff goes to pick up what looks like $100 tip, and it turns out to be like a tract. Mm-hmm. And that's just not a good look. I mean, just the sheer like disappointment and frustration I saw on her face, like that woman wants nothing to do with that kind of Christianity.
That happened to my dad and I. Like this summer, they were in town and we went to a Pirate game, and we're like walking back to the parking lot. I looked down, and of course it looked like $100 bill or something. And I pick it up, and it's a tract. And like as a pastor, that was my first thought. Like I was like, thank God I found it and picked it up.
Yeah.
And again, we should say, because there's probably some people listening to this, and we're probably going to say some things today, and they're going to take this as Alan and Spencer are saying that we shouldn't witness outside a grocery store, or we shouldn't have the gospel message in print. And that is not what we're saying.
Yeah, hear Pastor Alan's heart on this. Our desire is to see, especially in today's Christianity, to normalize evangelism,
right,
and to make it a part of our everyday lives. But to do so means we need to let go of some of the practices that are maybe like cringy and
very
are
cringy.
Not done necessarily in love or thoughtfulness, not done with real curiosity and empathy, but are done as tasks to do. And yes, there's going to be someone out there who's like, well, I picked up the $100 tract and gave my life to Jesus. And that's awesome. Like we celebrate that. But generally
I typically
speaking,
do it when it's like $1,000 tract.
Oh, that's when you give your license. There you go.
That
checks out.
Anyway.
But I think that's where our heart in this is, how do we raise the temperature in this cultural moment for people to share their faith, but to do so in a way that is tied to like lifelong discipleship and relationships that can grow into true community and life change, and not just done as kind of a quick, contrived methodology.
It's authenticity, it's transparency, and we're going to talk about that later, about just how do we share our story in a very real and transparent way. And you hit it, like Like even right now, where you and I serve here at ACAC, we're doing this sermon series on Jonah called The Reluctant Messenger, and we're talking about this. And you and I have talked about it as pastors. Like one of the troubling things that I see and you see is that a lot of church people, like whether you go to ACAC or not, a lot of church people view their pastor or their staff as the professional ministers, and we're going to invite our non-Christian friends to a church service or a Christmas service or some special event, and then we're going to pass it off, if you will, so that the pastor can get them saved. And again, let me clarify, it's not that those things are bad. We do it at the church where we serve. Like, we want to do a great event like we do Gospel Sunday in the summer or Christmas, and we want to encourage people to bring their friends so they can hear the gospel message. However, like it should be normal practice for every follower of Jesus to be able to share their stories, because I really believe like that's the most effective evangelism. I have some stats. Can I share these? Like as we kind of dive into this, and I have like a really
I
fun
love
quiz for
stats.
you. You love stats.
I love
All
that.
right. Some people who don't are going to glaze over, but this is the seriousness of like just Jesus followers sharing their faith. So these statistics are Barna Research Group. You're familiar with that. So if you go back to 1993, where were you in 1993, by the way?
Oh, my wife and I were just discussing this in 1993. I was 10 years old.
You were 10 in 1993.
Yeah, I was 10 years old, and the Green Bay Packers had recently acquired Reggie White, and it was
You really know your
phenomenal
1993 stats.
It was a phenomenal year in my life. I bought a Reggie White jersey. I still have it. It fit my middle school body or my elementary school body, or whatever it was at the time. Doesn't fit this body today, but I still have it.
Well, if you go back to 1993, 89% of Christians believed evangelism was their responsibility. Like, which, okay, 90% pretty much in 1993. If you go to 2018, so we're still like 7 years ago, that number dropped to 64%, which is crazy.
That's a steep drop off.
Yeah. And here we are 7 years later, what is it now?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm betting less than half.
Probably. Nearly half, here's another statistic, 47% of unchurched people who don't go to church, say that they would be open to a faith conversation. Like everybody who's listening to this podcast, or if you're watching on YouTube or wherever it is, and you follow Jesus, I want you to think about that. Like half of your friends, your neighbors who don't know Jesus, don't care to know Jesus, say that they would be open to a faith conversation.
Yeah.
That should motivate us right there. Here's the last one. Only 3 in 10 of unchurched Americans, like 30%, say a Christian has ever shared with them one-on-one how to become a Christian, how to follow Jesus. Like 30% of people who don't know Jesus say that people have shared the gospel with them. I mean, that should like be a gut check to us.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting about those stats is like I've seen similar stats to this from Barna, and the number of people who are open to an invitation to church on like at Easter or Christmas, like from a loved one, from a friend, goes like way up. Like you're more likely to get a yes than a no inviting people to church for a holiday, even in this cultural moment. The challenge is, I would say probably that 64% of Christians that believe evangelism is their personal responsibility, they think that the extent of that responsibility is inviting someone to church maybe.
Right.
And not necessarily sharing their personal stories, their testimonies, and sharing about Jesus in a personal way. It's let me get someone to church,
Right.
and then the pastor will take care of it.
I wonder too, like how many people struggle, especially with younger generations. So before we get into some serious conversation, I thought I would do a little quiz with you, because you have 3 daughters, 2 of which are Gen Z, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
here's what I want to do, and we're going to tie this into the conversation here and try to make it educational for those who are listening. I'm going to drop to you
Oh, I know it's coming.
some Gen Z slang
All
And
right.
I'm going to ask you if you know what those terms mean. And if you don't, I will use it in the form of a sentence. But the sentence that I'm going to use it in is in a sharing your faith example. So it could even help our listeners. Like, there's probably some grandparents that may be listening to this podcast. And like tomorrow, they can share with your grandkids about Jesus and they can drop in some Gen Z slang. What do you say?
This test is brought to you by Alan's use of ChatGPT.
Actually, it's Claude.
It's
but-
Claude. Okay.
Yeah, and the real test, I was like, Emma and Bailey and Jen were here, and I was like, before you came in, I was like saying this, and I was like just fumbling the even enunciation of some of these words. So I'm going to start with some easy ones
Okay.
and see if you know the definition of the word, and then we're going to work to some hard ones. Okay, great Gen Z slang, slay.
Slay means like you killed it. You did a great job.
All right, there you go. So like if someone was to use that, it would be, my friend totally slayed her testimony at the coffee shop. 3 people asked about Jesus.
Yeah, she did a fantastic job
All right.
telling people about Jesus.
So now
She crushed that. We used to say you killed that, and that
Yeah.
became slay.
So you killed that, you crushed it, is
Yeah.
now slay.
Yeah.
Do you know what no cap means?
No cap means cap. Well, cap means lie. So no cap means this. That's real. That's the truth.
All right, so let me do this. Can you use no cap in a sentence about sharing your faith?
Jesus is no cap, the way and the life.
Oh,
Yeah.
is that like the new Spencer translation, the paraphrase Bible?
Yeah. Yeah. I
Actually-
didn't really tell anyone I didn't tell anyone my faith. I just quoted the Bible. But
And yeah,
But
there
yeah,
probably
no
is
cap.
there probably is a Gen Z translation somewhere.
the Packers are the best team in football. No cap.
Oh my goodness. All right, let's go. That's a great segue to the word mid.
Mid. So the Steelers are mid. No,
Oh.
I'm sorry. Let me retract that.
You realize like our audience
Most of our audience are
Go
Steelers fans. Yeah, mid is mid tier. Like it's like
Mediocre.
average, mediocre. Yeah. So my youngest daughter uses this word to describe to my wife's chagrin, like almost every dinner, my youngest daughter says, that was mid. And she does it on purpose because she knows it gets my wife agitated. So I would say like, hey, like, you know, if you're living a life without purpose, that's pretty mid. Like, Jesus didn't come to give you a mid life. He came to give you abundant life.
He came to give you a slay life.
Yeah.
Did I say that right?
Jesus slayed getting slayed on the cross for you. Right?
All right.
No?
How about
I don't know if that
we
works.
just jack this up. I need to stop trying to. Okay, how about the word bet? My son uses this a lot. Bet.
Like, I'm going to prove it. It means like, okay, yes, like we're going to do
Yeah.
that.
Like I'll text him, like, "Hey, meet you at 4:00." Bet.
Yeah. All right, bet.
Can you use that in an evangelism sentence?
If you invite Jesus into your life and you follow him, you get everlasting life. Bet.
It's like period.
I'd be way more winsome with this if I had time. But
Okay, this is like Claude came. I'm just going to read this sentence. Understood the assignment.
yeah, they understood. They knew exactly what they came to do. They slayed what they came to do.
Okay.
So, for instance, we recently at the church had a volunteer rally where we brought our
Yes.
team ACAC together and celebrated them, and and we said, hey, wear jerseys, wear your favorite sports teams. Kind of made it a tailgate kind of vibe, ballpark vibe, and like several people understood the assignment. Like came out with like full jersey get up and like we're ready to roll, and then we gave out like our own version of the terrible towel, and people were like going, you know, so I felt like people understood the assignment when they came.
This is what Claude came up with as using it as a sentence, which I thought was pretty good. Jesus really understood the assignment when it came to loving broken people like me.
Yeah.
Okay, so he got it.
Bet.
All right, I need to find some that are a little harder. Slaps. What is slaps?
Well,
You probably know that one.
Yeah. Slaps means like it's great.
Okay, can you use that in a form of a sentence?
I often refer to music as slapping. In the form of a evangelism sentence, I don't know. Life with Jesus slaps. Like I don't know.
All right,
It's too early for this.
Here we go a little
Yeah.
harder, and I'm like sweating because this is one of the words that I mispronounce.
Yeah, I'm
And
waiting for this.
and I'm
You've been
trying-
giving me like the one syllable.
And I'm trying not, because this is captured. Skibidi.
Skibidi.
Did I say it
doesn't-
right?
Yeah, skibidi.
Skibidi. I said it right.
So skibidi doesn't really, as far what my kids tell me, skibidi doesn't really mean anything. It's just like it's just like a random word.
Okay.
And it has to do with like skibidi toilet. But people just say, my daughter walks around the house going skibidi baka, and I don't know what that means, but like I think it's a useless word.
So you can't use it?
I don't know how to use it.
All right.
Life without Jesus is what does the Apostle Paul say? He says his life is rubbish without.
Yeah.
I would say skibidi instead of
Your life
rubbish.
without Jesus is skibidi.
Yeah. I don't know, man. That's
a stupid word. I'm
That's
sorry.
a stupid word.
Okay, this is one I learned.
they know it's a stupid word. They say it because they
it's
know it's
skibidi.
stupid.
Skibidi is skibidi.
Yeah.
Is
They
that
know
right?
it. Yeah.
Okay. I did not know this one. Ohio.
So Ohio is like, there's a reference to Ohio is like this they refer to Ohio as like this crazy place where like just the wildest and craziest and most unhinged stuff happens. And so they refer to Ohio as like this place where things are just like super unhinged.
So again,
I don't know how to
Claude
use it
is
in a
like
sentence.
life without Jesus is straight Ohio.
Yeah.
I feel bad for people who are in Ohio.
Well, I
like,
mean, do
watching
you
this,
feel bad?
Except for Cleveland.
Do you feel bad for people in Ohio? You don't.
I have friends.
You
in
don't.
Okay, just a couple more. I had not heard this one. Dog water.
I don't actually know it though. I've never heard that one. My kids have not used that one around me yet.
Really bad. Which
That
if
makes
you, If you
sense.
think about it,
I would not want my dog's water
like you could say, my life was straight dog water
without Jesus,
without Jesus.
without JC.
What?
Bet.
Okay, here's a big one. This is the last one, and I mispronounced this one too.
I'm waiting for it.
All right, aura farming.
Aura farming is what you did in a recent sermon where you were like, "Hey, I spoke at this middle school, and this guy's now a pastor because of this message I
come
gave."
on.
And you told the story that Kenny, one of our producers, like met a guy who is a pastor today and you told that story to the congregation.
So
and
I
you
was
were like,
aura
and
farming?
you were like, "I'm not trying to get credit for this." And what you could have said is, "I'm not trying to aura farm here."
Oh, I should have said that.
That would have been you would have like
I would have saved it.
you would have won over so many people by using that phrase. In fact, you should try to work in a Gen Z phrase once a week.
Well, Alex, my daughter, she's always trying to do clock it,
Oh yeah.
at
Yeah,
the
you can do
end,
that.
which we need to
But
explain.
aura
what clock-
farming is something that my kids say that I aura farm because like it's the people coming up after church and like telling you did a good job on your sermon or whatever. And my kids will be standing there watching this happen and they're like, "Dad, you're aura farming." And I'm like, "I'm not trying to." Well, my kids just straight up roast me nonstop. So
That's
where
just
this
that's
comes
just skibidi.
from.
Like whenever I don't know what to say now, I'm just gonna use the word
Yeah.
skibidi. So
Okay.
so here we go. There you go. Like that's
I feel like I did way better at that
You
than I
did.
thought that
You
I was
did
going to
really-
do.
you did
I
really-
was nervous that I was going to get
did-
like
you did really
outed
good.
as Gen Z illiterate, and I
That's-
felt like I did pretty well.
that's our contribution to the listening audience to how to share their faith with Gen Z. Please don't try to use that. Okay, in all seriousness, let's dive into some conversation. Here's my question. We talked about oftentimes how church people, Christians, look at pastors as the one to do evangelism. Why do we think that sharing your faith or evangelism is for the quote unquote professionals?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that in the last, I'm gonna sound like I'm being like a real historian here, but I don't know this to be true. I have noticed that the trend of church over the last really like post World War II has become more and more centralized to the leader or the kind of the trained pastors, and it's not kind of equipping the saints for the work of ministry. And so more and more emphasis has been on people being trained for ministry or developed for ministry or holding a specific position in ministry. And it's just become very like leader centric, and especially in the American church, I would say. And the responsibility has not been well distributed to the the saints overall. And so I think what we're having to do now is to like undo some of those things. It's like I'm working on our house right now. We have a lot of house projects, and one of the projects I recently worked on was literally stripping away layers from our kitchen that were put on top of the original layers, so that I could actually do things the way they were meant to be done. But it meant I had to pull up old flooring, and I had to pull down like old wall stuff that was patched in, and just you know, you have to strip away some things in order to get back to the basics and get to the heart of what you really want to do. And I think that we're in a time where we're kind of tearing down some of those layers that have built up in the American church. Some people think this is part of like deconstruction, and some of that is people who are deconstructing the overall faith. But I think actually a really healthy deconstruction is tearing down the veneer of American church that has gotten in the way of us actually doing the things of Jesus.
Yeah. Well, the Great Commission was not given to pastors. It was given to every believer.
It was given to everybody.
So every believer.
Every Christian is called to evangelize. There's a gift. There's a spirit-given gift of evangelism, and I think that is a specific thing that is given to people who have a gift for evangelism. And I think those people end up becoming like Billy Grahams, and they become people that you meet, and they can't stop talking about Jesus. They do it well, and they have a unique passion for it. I think that's a real thing that the Spirit gives us. But ultimately, like, all of us are called to evangelize. Even if you don't have that specific gift for evangelism, we're called to evangelize. We've been given the Great Commission. We've been called to bear witness to Jesus and go and make disciples. Paul tells Timothy, like, do the work of an evangelist. I think those things exist for all of us, regardless of our status, regardless of our consecration as a leader in the church.
Well, you mentioned it earlier, Ephesians 4:11 and 12, where there specifically Paul is talking about the role of pastors, evangelists, apostles, and saying their job, speaking about the group of calling, their job is to equip the saints for the work of ministry. And you and I have spent a lot of time talking about that. But it's our job as staff to equip the people here to do that. It's not our job to do all of the work. And I would go as far to say that when you hear this, going back to the statistics about half the people who are unchurched would listen to the gospel, I would say it's probably better received from someone who's not a pastor than it is who is. Like, when I'm out or playing golf and they go like, what do you do for a living? It's like, I'm a pastor. All of a sudden, they apologize for all the cussing they did for the first 3 holes. And then, their whole attitude towards me changes. And there is this posture of like, okay, I'm trying to win them over. What the average non-pastor should recognize is like, you have an opportunity that you and I often don't because of the title that we carry.
Yeah, I think the most effective and like really impactful evangelism is built upon relationship anyway. And someone coming to our church, ACAC, they're gonna have a great experience in terms of the music and the people that they encounter there. They're gonna hear a good word. Like those things are all good, and they might help someone feel like, oh man, I'd like to come back to this. But the most effective way that people are going to hear about Jesus is in your kitchen or in your living room or across the table from you, because it's going to be in the context of real life and real relationship. Yeah. And that's really, what you just said there, like the average person has a far better chance of sharing their faith in a meaningful way that bears fruit in the life of someone else when they're doing it in the context of their regular, ordinary lives and the relationships that they have than you or I will from the platform.
So let's get to the nuts and bolts. Like, honestly, because again, people listening to this, like, okay, that's great. I get it. I want to do it. Because I think most people, they want to, and there's certainly some fear involved, and we could talk about that. But like, how do people do that? Like,
Mhm.
for me, one of the things is just like, don't make it weird. Like kind of we were talking about, um,
Don't be standing outside grocery stores just waiting for
like
people to come out.
we don't have to backdoor it.
Yeah.
Like making it natural. Like, what are some things you would say? Like people listening to this, like how how can they be natural in sharing faith with people, their
Yeah.
friends?
So, Greg Laurie, who's probably one of the most well-known and probably fruitful evangelists of our time, he says that we ought to be stepping stones, not stumbling blocks.
That's good.
Which I love that turn of
That's a great
phrase. And
line.
then another phrase he uses is that if you want to win some, you've got to be winsome,
Mhm.
which I think is fantastic because what winsome really is, it's being endearing. I think it's authenticity. Um, it's being real. I think authenticity is enchanting to people, especially to millennials and Gen Z. Like they sniff out inauthenticity so fast, and so being an authentic person and carrying yourself with humility and curiosity and empathy. Um, I think that's being winsome. And if you think about how Jesus like shares the gospel with people in Scripture, whether it's Nicodemus or the woman at the well, these are the two kind of who we would say are like the two opposite ends of the spectrum when it comes to society and who they represent. Like Jesus is winsome with both. He meets both where they are. He doesn't shame them. He asks questions. He sees them, and I think a big part of this, like I know we're going to get into some practical things, but like just the conditions of authenticity and empathy and humility and curiosity goes a really long way towards being able to share your faith in a way that doesn't feel threatening, doesn't have people immediately backing up. Part of the reason people recoil when they hear what we do for a living is there's perceptions they have about what we're about, uh, and they know that our job is to tell people about Jesus, and they're like, oh, he's going to try to convert me,
Yeah.
and so there's some of those like misconceptions that people have about the role that we have, but like when you're with a friend and you are just an empathetic, humble, curious, authentic person in your friendship, like you can ask questions and you can talk about faith in a way that doesn't feel threatening because it's who you are.
Yeah.
It doesn't cause people to recoil because they already know that you love them, and that's where I think a big shift needs to happen. That's what's lost when you kind of just do the drive-by evangelism,
Yeah.
drop the tract on the sidewalk outside of PNC Park or what have you. Like you miss the opportunity to package the story of Jesus in your life in your actual life and who you are. And I think more people just need to learn that it's just being who you are and telling the story of what Jesus has done in your life.
Yeah, it's a 24-hour, 365 days a year, you're living your faith. Like I was thinking while you were talking about how many times in like TV shows and movies Christians are portrayed and how they're portrayed.
Yeah.
Like it's weird. And its perception is reality. It's like
Yeah.
Hollywood does that because we've given them that perception and reality.
Yes, 100%.
And I just like oftentimes I think the best thing we can do as Jesus followers is that especially when we're going through difficult times. Like I really believe our non-church, unchurched friends, neighbors, they pay more attention to how we handle suffering, difficult circumstance than they do when everything's going good. And like if we as believers, and what I'm not talking about is, when we get the bad health diagnosis, well, praise God, God works all things together for good for those who loves him. And I'm just like, is that scripture true? Yes, but that's not reality. Like everybody knows you're dealing with disappointment. Everyone knows you're dealing with doubt. And when you don't display that and show that, you can have faith, but yet be like, man, yeah, that health diagnosis sucks. I'm hurting. I'm crying. Like I trust in God, but man, I really have doubt right now. Like that, those honest conversations, just being real, shows that our faith is real.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to Philippians 2, like the model that Paul gives us of who Jesus is that Jesus, despite all of his privilege, despite everything he had going on, despite being God, like had the humility to see others as more important than themselves. That's having the mind of Christ, and coming close, drawing near. And so something I often talk about is just like that humility plus proximity equals empathy. And just being able to like see people and then come close to them, and not in a way where we're kind of asserting ourselves, asserting our agenda, but being able to see others where they are and then come close to them. That builds in our hearts a love for them as neighbors, as friends, as family, as whoever. And that creates a great platform for us not to push something on someone, but to invite them to experience Jesus in a real way. And I think that's where like all of the kind of methodologies that I've seen that help kind of people go from I want to evangelize, I want to reach people, I want to serve my neighbors, but I don't know how. Like all the methodologies that I think actually work begin with that, like really seeing people, being curious about people's stories, and loving people where they are, which is a value that we hold dear.
So you and I both agree it starts there, but what we can't do is give the misconception that it ends there. Because a lot of people do. Like, I mean, no doubt how we live is the greatest testimony.
Yeah.
You know, I've used the phrase like, you're the only Bible some people will ever read. Yeah. So it's 100% true, and it has to start there. But yet, we do have to proclaim. Like there comes a point where the words have to come out of your mouth. You have to get over your fear and vocalize your faith.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my like personal like pet peeves is people misquote St. Francis. They bring up that quote like preach the gospel at all times when necessary, use words. Well,
quarterback. Who was it? A quarterback that I can only remember the jersey color. It was like green and it was green and gold.
Stop.
In the North Packers. Wasn't there a quarterback that?
Oh gosh, we're gonna skip that. Right. St. Francis though never said this, right? Like you could study St. Francis. He never told people preach the gospel at all times and when necessary use words. But that is people's out because it's such a popular quote out there. That's people's out. Like, well, I preach the gospel at all times and how I live my life, and I don't have to tell people about Jesus like with my own word. Well, that's not at all.
No,
that's not.
And that's not what you and I are saying.
And that's not what we were saying. What we're saying is like you earn the right to be heard by how you live your life. When I was part of Young Life, that was something that they often talked to us about when we were sharing our faith with students. Was like, hey, you earn the right to be heard by how you love people.
That's right.
And so that's what we're talking about, is saying like let's not do these things where we think we've accomplished something because we've dropped a tract on the table, or we've kind of sidewalk evangelism that there's no relationship, there's no follow through. Let's make sure that we're doing this in the soil of love and relationship.
Yeah. So what are some good ways that you have seen and incorporate in your life of moving from just modeling it and living it to actually opening your mouth and engaging your neighbor, a friend at your kid's school, in a faith conversation?
Yeah, well, I think two things that I've seen and have put into practice in my own life. The first is a method. I think it's now called Bless, but I originally first saw it as the Bells method by Michael Frost. He wrote a book called Surprise the World, where it's a small book, but it's so practical. But he talks about bells, and I think the more popular version is Bless now, which is begin with prayer. So we're always praying about opportunities, praying for others. And just praying for others in general. But then we're listening with care, which is part of that humility. Like, are we willing to actively listen to others with compassion and not just listen to interject, but to really understand people, and then eating together. Again, that's communities formed around the table. So let's break bread, let's spend time together, let's go grab coffee, whatever it is, but have that relationship, and then serve in love. And then you share your story.
Yeah.
And all of those things, those first four things is what kind of earns the right
Right.
to be heard. And I think that's a great, for someone who's never shared their faith or is struggling to share your faith and find the opportunities to, like, that method is really great because it focuses on, let's till the soil so that like a seed can be planted and in someone's life, because we've again, you don't turn this into an agenda, but this is a great like framework for investing in a relationship. Another model that is dear to me is my friend started an organization called Front Yard Mission. It's all about getting people to love their neighbors and take what Jesus said seriously. Take what the Bible says seriously about loving neighbors.
Yeah.
Love your actual neighbors. And my church in Colorado, we took this on a couple years ago. And we trained our folks around this Front Yard Mission framework, which is very similar to the Bless method. And it's pray first, love all, invite often. Pray first, love all, invite often. So again, praying for your neighbors. Just when you're walking your dog, pray for your neighbors at your houses. Get to know who your neighbors are.
Right.
So you're praying for people, loving all of them. Your neighbors are very different from you. You're going to have a very diverse group of people around you. It doesn't matter who they are. You're called to love them.
Right.
And so love them well, and then invite often. Hospitality is rich, rich, rich soil for gospel conversations. And so invite people often into your life, into your home, into your driveway for donuts and coffee on a Saturday morning or whatever it might be. And then this forms a context for you to share your faith and share Jesus with people, because you have been intentional about loving your neighbors well. In Colorado Springs, last summer, we got a new mayor. He's a former pastor who's now the mayor of Colorado Springs, and he saw a real need for the community to become a better neighboring community, a community where people were loved well. And felt like they belonged with each other. And he started a 1,000 neighborhood gathering emphasis. So he asked the community to throw 1,000 block parties or community gatherings in the summer of 2024. The moment this went out, I went to our church and said, listen, like we shouldn't have to wait for the city to challenge us to do this, but if the city's saying, love your neighbors, like we ought to be able to do this. So I challenged us to do at least 1% of those 1,000 neighborhood gatherings should happen through our church. And that challenged them to 2%. We ended the summer at 4%. Our church hosted a little over 40 of these neighborhood gatherings. And what happened is people started hosting block parties or like donuts in the driveway or inviting their neighbors over for dinner or whatever. They started doing this intentionally. And it started with just love your neighbors. Create a culture of loving your neighbors. Let's get back to neighboring. But what happened is it opened the door for real faith conversations, because now they knew their neighbors' names. They knew what their stories were. They knew what they were about. They were inviting each other over for game nights. They were inviting people to church. It opened the door for God to move through his people because they were actively loving their neighbors. And I think that's something that all of us can do.
Well, to me, that's the key. Like, what's the motivation? Like, your approach. Is it truly loving your neighbor, or is it getting them saved? Now, some people will hear that and go, well, wait a second. I thought we were supposed to get them saved. 100%. But seeing some person come to know Jesus I would say, is underrooted in your love for them. And people sniff that out. Like, if you genuinely just love your neighbor that's across the street and you invite them over, it's like where we get in trouble is when we like have this Excel spreadsheet and this, like, I'm going to do step 1, step 2, step 3. And it's like, okay, now you're more concerned about getting them saved than you are loving them. You know what I'm saying? That. And so, like, for me, it's even practically like just asking questions. Like, hey, what's happening? Getting to know in your life and saying, hey, what are your thoughts on God? Can I pray with you? Like, have you ever thought about prayer? And if you're listening, you said this, that was, I think the second one of after prayer, bless and through the blesses. If you're listening If you're showing genuine compassion and love, if you're asking questions, then that opens up the opportunity for you to share your story. And that's ultimately what it is. We say it all the time, like, no one can argue with your story. Like, they can argue theologically, they can argue of your belief of the Bible, but no one can argue when you say, I don't know, but this is what Jesus has done in my life. Like, my life was like this, and now it's like this.
Yeah, and
Can't argue.
And I also just think that all of any of the practices that we have as believers, followers of Jesus, they can always veer into legalism. We can always get the wrong motivation. It might even start with the right motivation, but switches to the wrong motivation. We lose our first love, and it suddenly becomes legalistic. And that can happen with evangelism, where it just becomes like, I gotta check some things off my list and get this done. And we just want to keep bringing it back to, like, when you are with Jesus, when you actually are spending time with Jesus in the everyday stuff of life, when you're practicing his presence, when you are in communion with him in prayer and worship regularly, in his word regularly, like, you're going to love Jesus so much that you can't help but talk about him. I got excited. My friend, our mutual friend Tim, got really excited about a podcast that he shared with me. And when he told me about it, he was so excited about it and knew that I would like love this podcast, that I immediately fell in love with it. I shared about it in a previous episode, but I started listening to it, couldn't get enough of it, and just started telling everybody about this podcast. And whatever it might be, in the week before the NFL season starts, Micah Parsons gets traded to the Packers. I talked about that with everyone for a week straight. I'm still talking about it with people. Like, I was just so excited about this good news that happened. And that's what naturally happens with good news. You have to share it.
You didn't have to memorize like all of the stats.
No,
all of that. Like, when I talk to somebody about this, here's what I'm going to say. Like,
I just want to tell people what I've experienced and how good it is. And
really
and that's what we want for people, is to, like, yes, it's intimidating. Yes, like, there's some like cultural fears that have kept us from wanting to tell people about Jesus. And we're worried about what people are going to think about us when we tell people about Jesus. We don't think about that when it comes to anything else that we enjoy. When we enjoy something, when we have a great experience, we tell people about it. And that's what we want. If you have experienced Jesus in a real and profound way, and he's changed your life, like, tell people about it. The way that the gospel goes forth is through the enthusiasm of God's people as they experience redemption. It's not perfunctory.
So
it's power.
One topic as we kind of get towards the end of this that I really believe is important for us to discuss, and we're talking about evangelism, is the question, and we were making fun of Gen Z, but millennials wrestle with this, and it is a generational tension. The question isn't global evangelism just cultural imperialism, colonialism. And it's interesting. My wife and I led a team to Nicaragua this past summer, and we had a lot of young adults and we had some older generations. And I brought this up while we're in Nicaragua. And it was interesting because older generations, like, they're like, what are you talking about? Like, it was not even on their radar. Like, why would you even consider that to be the case? But for younger people, when we talk about going into every nation, every tongue, every tribe, going into what we would call creative access countries in the alliance, for them, the question of cultural imperialism, colonialism is a real thing. And so I would just say, like, it is something to take seriously. It's a question as believers that we have to answer, especially as American believers. So, like, how let's talk about that just for a few moments.
Yeah, I mean, I think that global evangelism, what we would call missions, is probably the most popular term we would use for this. There have been throughout history imperialistic motivations for that.
We have to acknowledge the mistakes.
We have to acknowledge that has been true. I would say more often than not, that's happened when Christianity's been aligned with empire.
Yeah.
And when those are inseparable, that's when colonialism, that's when the imperialistic approach has taken place, because it was that mission to advance Christianity was really a mission to advance empire.
Yeah.
And that's what you have with like, colonialism in Africa and some of these other countries. It's really empire driving that, not necessarily the gospel of Jesus. Now there is bad practices, but I would just say that the answer to wrong practice is not
Don't do it at all.
don't do it.
An
It's right
elimination.
practice.
Right.
And I think that one of the things I love about the movement we're a part of, the Christian Missionary Alliance, is that they recognize that the gospel in these contexts around the world goes forth best when it's in the hands of the people. And so the Alliance is actually taking the approach that as we go into countries, like we want to partner with the people in those countries and allow kind of native speakers and the people who are native to those countries to be the ones who are actually advancing the gospel. We've taken an approach of training and building up much more, and to the point where there are countries where the Alliance had presence, and the national church in those countries has grown so fruitful and healthy that the Alliance has pulled out of those countries because like we don't need to be a presence anymore, because we lit the match and got the fire started, but now like the gospel's going forth and it's in the hands of the people. And I see that being more of a priority in how we approach global evangelism these days. We're very passionate about getting the scriptures in the native
In their
tongue
language,
of the people that we're trying to reach. And
that's what we're talking about, is not
Yeah.
imposing Western culture on other cultures. It's really bad.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree with you 100% on when you combine empire with mission, but I do think there are plenty of bad examples of just bad practice.
Yeah.
Understanding like what I shared with the team when we were in Nicaragua is that it's really a hard approach. I mean, you mentioned Philippians 2, where Jesus came not to be served, but to serve. And so good practice is when we go to, whether it's Nicaragua or a creative access country, it's like, I am coming to serve. It's not my culture, my perspectives, my liturgy even, or how, like, it's, I am lifting you up. I'm sharing the gospel, but I'm lifting you and your culture, and how can I serve you in your ways and the cultural norms that are there.
Yeah, and Jesus transcends cultures.
He does.
Right. So ultimately, the goal is, while there may be some enmeshment because of how we're trying to navigate language barriers or cultural barriers, like the best missionaries learn stories, and they do what the Apostle Paul does, where he says, "Oh, I just saw your unknown God, and you talk about this unknown God over here. Well, I'm going to tell you this is who you're talking about." And he begins to tell the people the story of the gospel in a way that they can understand, and within their context, and he brings Jesus to the center for them in a way that transforms society. And I think that's some of the best stories we hear of missionaries is going into a place and going, "Oh, this is your practice. This is how you've actually already perceived God at work in the world. You just didn't have a name for it." And so let's come to where you are. Let's love people where they are, and begin to help you uncover Jesus here. And then let's get out of the way. And then we, at that point, are we're just trying to help spin the wheel a little bit to allow the gospel to take root in their communities. And so I get excited hearing those stories.
It's cool. All right. So if you stuck with us for this long, I think both of us would just encourage everybody listening. Like, one thing I always say is you should be able to write your story out. Like, if you're listening and Jesus has changed your life and you're following him, find a way to write what he has done in your life in a paragraph or less. Like, just write it out. I think it's always a great way. Pray for those opportunities. Be authentic and real, and share your faith. And I'm going to use a slang word, if I get it right, to finish the episode. You ready? You ready?
Hit me.
Clock it.